Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today, for those Korean Americans living abroad who only understand English, let me comment in English and introducing a policy article in the Rand Corporation's homepage display by the title of The State and the Fate of America's Indo-Pacific Alliances. As we have watched the ongoing process of the U.S. presidential election, which finished 2 days ago, international politics is entering a new arena with uncertainties and unpredictabilities of President-elect Trump's future policy orientation not still fixed, still on talks on many issues around the world. So today, let me specially introduce a commentary in Rand Corporation written by Derek Grossman, who is a specialist in international politics, with the title of The State and Fate of America's Indo-Pacific Alliances. According to his analysis in the commentary, he's saying that the United States Indo-Pacific Security Alliance, Australia, Japan, the Philippines, South Korea, and Thailand have a major stake in the outcome of the U.S. presidential election. But the popular notion being that the November 5th election, which finished a few days ago, between former President Donald Trump and sitting Vice President Kamala Harris represent an inflection point for U.S. foreign policy. For example, the continuance of liberal internationalism versus isolationism and America's first geopolitics, probably pushed by Donald Trump, president-elect, which is vastly overstated, at least in the Indo-Pacific. Rather, the U.S. foreign policy in this region is likely to remain consistent. According to his article, he's saying that although Trump and U.S. Vice President Joe Biden disagree on most issues, one area of consensus is Indo-Pacific. During Trump's first term in office in 2019, he and his team published the Indo-Pacific Strategy, which sought to maintain a free and open area, primarily through strengthening alliances and partnerships to counter China. When Biden entered office in 2021, he doubled down on his predecessor's approach. Of course, Trump, being a more transactional and unpredictable leader, at times praised or threatened traditional U.S. allies. But overall, his administration not only left these alliances intact, but also arguably enhanced them as well. The Biden administration sought to repair what damage was caused by Trump and to vigorously upgrade alliances and partnerships across the board to assist in great power competition against Beijing. During her campaign, Harris emphasized continuity with the Biden administration's Indo-Pacific strategy, while Trump, did not mention any distances from his predecessor's policy. So the prospect of a continuity between the two main presidential candidates during the election campaign period should be a welcome development for U.S. allies, who increasingly feel threatened by China's growing economic and military power. Beijing's rising assertiveness across the Indo-Pacific against Taiwan in its air defense identification zone, the Philippines' territorial features within its exclusive economic zone in the South China Sea, or against India along the Himalayas at the disputed land border, is convincing allied capitals to bolster their security ties to the United States. Additionally, North Korea's increasingly provocative threat and growing nuclear arsenal are of particular concern to Japan and South Korea. These trends work independently of and supersede any political dynamics in Washington. In other words, whether under Trump or Harris, the China factor will foster the continued development of its U.S. alliance network. Whether under Trump or Harris, the China factor will foster continued development of the U.S. alliance network in the region. So, according to the commentary, the United States alliance with Australia demonstrate how domestic U.S. politics have been virtually irrelevant to foreign policy and threat perceptions of China most salient. During the Trump era, support for the alliance remained strong, even as Canberra harbored deep reservations about the wisdom of relying so heavily on a less predictable United States. In 2017, for example, Australia agreed to revive the Quad, comprised of fellow democracies, India, Japan, and the US, in part to find a collective means to counter China's revisionist behavior throughout the region. So this has functioned quite well as far as I understand. So at that time, from that time on, Canberra then further aligned itself with the US Indo-Pacific strategy. So Australia's ongoing bilateral tensions with China, including over Beijing's harsh treatment of Hong Kong, bilateral trade dispute, and alleged Chinese political interference, contributed to Canberra in 2020 conducting a major strategic review that concluded that China was Australia's main security threat. So, based on this, the Biden administration was able to further elevate the alliance in 2021 by inking AUKUS, Australia, UK, US security deal. Headlines by the joint production of nuclear-powered submarines. The AUKUS framework further encompasses a range of other security cooperation activities, including joint basing and advanced research into quantum computing and hypersonic technologies. In recent years, when Biden has met with Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, both leaders have expressed great satisfaction on where the alliance is today, not just historically strong based on shared values, but also shared interests like the push to counter China. Indeed, the White House in 2023 referred to Australia ties as an alliance for our times. Very, very strong alliance system. The story is very similar when it comes to Japan. Trump and Japan's then Prime Minister, the late Abe Shinzo, had an excellent personal relationship that was unharmed by Trump's ill-advised decision to withdraw from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP, multilateral trade agreement, of which Japan was a part, or his public musing about revising the Japan-US Mutual Defense Treaty. Instead, the two leaders remained focused on China. This is very important, Remained focused on China. Abe, for example, probably convinced Trump to shift from Asia-Pacific to Indo-Pacific focus, that is to include India and the Indian Ocean region as part of a collective strategy to counter China. Japan was also an advocate for reviving the Quad. Tokyo made these moves because during Trump's tenure, it worried about its years-long standoff over Senkaku Island in the East China Sea, also claimed by China, which calls them the Diaoyu Island. Japan was also concerned about North Korea, which in 2017 fired ballistic missiles over its territory. Since Biden came to office, Japan has shifted its attention farther south to Taiwan Strait. Tokyo believes that a conflict there could impact the security of its southwestern Ryukyu Island chain. So Japan has actively joined the US security framework in this region. So overall, Tokyo and Washington today are now more entwined than ever before, especially in areas like command and control and defense, industrial production, and maintenance. But Tokyo is still unsatisfied. It wants an additional collective security mechanism as another layer of protection. Notably, the new Japanese Prime Minister, Ishiba Shigeru, has called for the establishment of an Asian NATO. The Biden administration has unofficially declined to promote the idea, but a future administration could take it up, Asian NATO version. And Tokyo and Washington today are now more entwined than ever before, especially in these areas. Another example is the Philippines, one of the two U.S. security allies in Southeast Asia. The relationship has worked well during both the Trump and Biden administration terms. Trump overlapped with another transactional leader in Manila, President Rodrigo Duterte, who tended to appreciate Washington's deprioritization of values because it allowed him to wage a counter-narcotics war with impunity that alleged resulted in thousands of extrajudicial killings. Although some in the Trump administration were squeamish about Duterte's decision to pursue stronger security ties with China and Russia, they did not push the issue publicly. Rather, they sought to maintain a healthy and functioning alliance. And in fact, during Trump's tenure, the alliance expanded and deepened. And additionally, in 2020, Duterte threatened to cancel the visiting forces agreement, which could have been a severe blow to the alliance because it would have reduced the U.S. military's ability to enter and move within the Philippines. And with that issue, Trump responded, I don't really mind if they would like to do that. If it will save a lot of money, my views are different than others. The VFA, Visiting Forces Agreement, issue was kept under wraps, and it probably helped to save the alliance. So many strategies still going on in the Indo-Pacific. Not many changes probably. So Philippines, linkage to the United States has been strong since that time on, with more favors from the United States by helping the U.S. forces, stationing there with more comfortable conditions. Back in Northeast Asia, another U.S. security ally, South Korea, has been pleased overall with both the Trump and Biden administration. To be sure, there have been hiccups along the way, such as Trump's insistence that Seoul pay a five-fold increase in expenditures to keep U.S. military deployment on the peninsula during the special measures agreement negotiations, or its leveling of routine joint exercises as war games, feeding into North Korean propaganda. Had Trump overlapped with the next and the current president, Yoon Suk-yeol, the story would have been the opposite, as Yoon is an overhawk on North Korea issues. But this alignment fit well with Biden, who has essentially revived the Obama-era policy of strategic patience in dealing with Pyongyang, and as such, reinstated joint exercises and sought to deepen and expand the alliance between Biden and Yoon Suk-yeol government. So in 2023, Biden and Yoon, for example, inked the Washington Declaration, which pledged the greater sharing of U.S. nuclear planning with Seoul for a future Korean Peninsula contingency. So the two allies have deepened and strengthened bilateral ties during Yoon Suk-yeol's era there. So nowadays, the South Korean people have become increasingly more anti-China, which plays into Washington's hands and probably will contribute to Seoul seeking further involvement in the Indo-Pacific strategy. And the last area with more linkage in the Indo-Pacific era with the United States is Thailand, the other Southeast Asian nation that has a security alliance with the United States, which is less concerned about China than the Philippines or perhaps any other U.S. ally in the region. However, that relationship has not withered or at worst simply remained stagnant. Trump was committed to normalizing the Thailand-U.S. relationship, and after Bangkok in 2019 held an election that the United States deemed free and fair enough to fit hardly was, the Trump administration used it as a justification to pursue closer security ties. So during Biden administration period, he continued to engage Thailand, although with little tangible impact for the broader Indo-Pacific strategy to counter China. So overall, both the Trump and the Biden administration either elevated or at least prevented the worsening of U.S. security alliances. Indeed, the U.S. alliance engagement has been exceptionally strong in recent years and will be very difficult to undo no matter what a future administration might decide in the Indo-Pacific. And if threats from China and North Korea continue to rise, then our allies will continue to look to Washington for assistance, regardless of the particular policy choices a future Trump or Harris administration. The only thing that could shift this dynamic is a decline in the regional threat perceptions. But there seems to be a very remote possibility. After all, Trump was elected as the President of the United States. And overall, throughout this kind of analysis in the paper, we could conclude that the Indo-Pacific strategy, which was pursued by the United States, will be consistent and will not be changing. Probably will take similar steps to counter China with its most familiar allies in the region. Japan, South Korea, Philippines, Thailand, Australia, and so on. So, in a larger framework of security readjustment in the region, even after Trump administration inaugurated in the future, in 2 months' time, I think, no major changes. And South Korea could play a pivotal role with the United States to keep the Indo-Pacific region stable and most peaceful, protecting the major national interests of free democracies against those threatening authoritarian and dictatorial powers. Like we have witnessed the war in Ukraine and the war in the Middle East. In the Pacific region is to be managed in a stable way if the Trump strong commitment to peace in the region is to be repeated again as Biden administration pursued this kind of strategies. Thank you for listening my simple English commentary. Thank you very much.